start our show. Tom Dienhart joins me as we talk about our Saturday chat and our high stakes, high level draft today of defensive linemen. So we're going to pick two defensive tackles, two defensive ends. Have some fun doing that. List is pretty good from my standpoint. Looking at guys from 1970 on. That's one other part of this. And we want to thank our sponsors, of course, and that would be Follett's, Purdue Federal Credit Union, 6th Street Dive, the East End Grill, two Lafayette area restaurants that are open. And of course, Charters Team Remax Ability Plus, Kyle Charters and Company will sell you a home in the Lafayette area if you're interested. And then, of course, First Source Bank and Home Field Apparel, all sponsors of Gold and Black, and we'll mention some other restaurants on the back end of this. But Tom, as I always try to do here, I'm going to give you the first choice, and you can pick tackle. We're going to pick two tackles, two defensemen, a four-man front. Even though I know Purdue's played some five-man fronts in the days, they're going to play some three-man front this year if we get to that. So tell me who you want to pick.
Yeah, a lot of good choices, as you mentioned, Alan. Of course, Purdue earned that moniker of the den of defensive ends in the through the 1990s and 2000s. Even before that, as you know, some great players up front on defense for Purdue. But in my book, Alan Karpik, the one end who stands out the most, you have to pick number one is Roosevelt Colvin. Number 59 from Broad Ripple High School, Indianapolis, Indiana. Rosie Colvin was part of the Jim Coletto recruiting class in 1995. And Alan, all he did was set Purdue's all-time record for career sacks with 35. And, of course, he's number 2 all-time, Alan, in tackles for loss. All Roosevelt Colvin did was make plays. And, of course, the one play we always love to talk about, right, 1997, Michigan State, Ross-Ade Stadium. The ill-fated field goal attempt by Michigan State gets blocked by Leo Perez, scooped up by big Roosevelt Colvin, who rumbled and stumbled about 60, 70 yards to pay dirt to help spark that miraculous comeback against MSU. My favorite Purdue game ever. So, Alan, of my first pick and the first pick overall of our Purdue defensive line draft, Roosevelt Colvin, defensive end.
Yeah, great. Certainly, of course, also in that 1997 year, he had a lot to do with, I think he caused the fumble right on the Ron Paulus fumble that Adrian Beasley scooped and scored and pretty much delivered Purdue to the victory over the Fighting Irish. It kind of turned the whole thing around. Yeah, Roosevelt Colvin, a great pro also. Yeah. Great guy. And a guy that – great guy. That's true as well.
Great guy.
And yet you look at the situation that boy, there are a lot of good choices, and I actually would not. And I love Rosie. I'm not sure I would have picked him first, but I'm not sure I wouldn't have. That you make a very good case. And boy, if I have to pick a one spot, God, this is a hard one. I'm going to pick Dave Butts. Man, he qualifies because he's a tackle. And I think that's a hard call to make. First team All-American, also a great pro. A near Hall of Fame level player. I think both Colvin and Butts, I know Butts was all pro level a time or two with the Washington Redskins. Colvin, I think, may have made all pro with the Bears at one point in time, but of course played the Super Bowl champions as well. The thing about Dave Butts, he was the first of the monster size guys, 6'7", from just outside of Chicago. Yep. Bo Schembechler recruited him, but then of course he ends up coming to Purdue in the greatest recruiting class ever, as we always talk about, the one with Otis Armstrong and Darryl Stingley and Dave Butts and some others, many others, Gary Danielson, and yet they only finished 6-5, their best season. So anyway, that's another story. But I'm going to go with Dave Butts. Great. Statistically, he doesn't necessarily dominate. A little bit different game back there, but he was a great pass rusher and just a load to deal with in the number 62 at Purdue in the interior part of the line.
Yeah, about 6'7", like you said, 300 pounds. Yeah. Alan, the number 5 overall pick in the 1973 draft of the St. Louis Cardinals. As you know, one of 3 Boilermakers picked in the first round. of that 1973 draft, the likes of which Purdue has never seen since. So yeah, I love Dave Butts. I'm with you,
Yeah,
buddy.
that's absolutely.
All right, I'm gonna stay.
All right.
I'm gonna stay on the interior. This is a guy I love. This is a guy I think is the ultimate interior defensive lineman. Maybe Purdue's greatest defensive lineman on the interior ever. That man, Allen, are you sitting down? You're sitting down for this. That man.
I know.
That
You're
man
gonna
is
say,
Jeff
go ahead.
Scanina. It's Jeff Scanina. Number 40, Jeff Scanina, from the Chicago area, came to Purdue in the fall of '88 with Jim Swantz and Frank Komet. The old defensive line coach, Bill Kolar, really recruited those guys. I've been told stories about that over the years. Y'all sort of came together. All Chicago guys, Allen. A lot of them are going to go to Illinois, and they had a coaching change. I believe Makovic was out. And again, Purdue, Fred Akers swooped in, got those guys. Scanina redshirted while Schwantz and Komet played as a true freshman. Scanina redshirted, ended up playing at Purdue from 1989 to 92, was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in 1992. I think he still has the Big Ten, or he still has the Purdue career record for tackles for loss, and also the single season record for tackles for loss. Alan Jeff Scanina was just all man and became a beloved NFL player who it seems like he played 30 years in the NFL for 20 teams, right?
Yeah.
I think, I saw him at a spring football practice a couple of years ago, Alan. He looked like he could still play.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a side.
His longevity is unbelievable.
All the hits you take at tackle and the guy just was impervious to injury and was a stalwart and a very special player. Just too bad he couldn't have played on better teams at Purdue.
Yeah, though I did get a Super Bowl ring with the Rams.
St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis Rams, not the 1999 Rams.
Right, and obviously, really, really good player. And you're right, did not play on great teams, but he was dominant in 1992, and really all his years. He got his chance. That you think about it, that may have been one of the top 5 recruiting classes, even though it again didn't have a tremendous amount of success. But you talk about Scanina, Schwantz. You talk about guys like Peyton Minner, Brian Madden, guys that Madden, of course, went to LSU. Minner stayed at Purdue and then was a Chicago area guy. Never was a great player, but he was a very highly regarded guys. You had a couple quarterbacks in there as well. It just a very, very good class from that standpoint. Boy, this is not easy. I may pass on a first team All-American that you're going to swoop up and get, I'm afraid. But I'm going to pick Ryan Kerrigan. I just can't miss on a guy that Purdue's. I know he's a consensus All-American. He was Purdue's first unanimous All-American in 30 years, I think, when he got that pick in 2010. Ryan is obviously still a very good pro. Hasn't been a Hall of Fame level pro maybe, but he's been very good at the Washington Redskins or whatever the Redskins are going to be named before long. He is a high motor guy, was dominant in 2010. One of the most dominant games I ever saw a guy play, I think against Michigan in 2010, Denard Robinson. He did a great job of being able to and yet Purdue did not win the game, but he was just, his numbers he put up were unreal, and probably one of the best people you're ever going to find too. He is just a first class individual, to say the least. And that's my pick. And there's a lot of guys I'm leaving on the table here, but that's my second pick.
Yeah, great choice. What a specimen. Like you said, what a motor that guy has as well, Alan. A special player from Muncie, Indiana.
Muncie, Indiana, 3-star pick. Not super highly regarded. He was regarded well. I remember Joe Tiller talking about how they loved that guy, and they should have. Didn't start right away at Purdue. He did play a lot as a freshman in 2007, but he was a 3-year starter in 8, 9, and 10, and a very, very good player.
Yes, good choice.
To
Great
say the least.
There. I'm going to go back out to the edge defensive end with a guy from your era, Keena Turner.
Oh, yeah, I love Keena.
Chicago Vocational Tech, right?
Yep.
High school is Dick Butkus. A real stalwart, a real anchor of those famed junk defenses. of the late 70s that were the hallmark of the Jim Young era. Of course, as you know, Alan, Leon Burtonette was the coordinator. I'm on Facebook with Calvin Clark, and he posted a picture. You might probably remember the picture where they were all posed in the back of that dumpster with all the
Yeah, oh,
junk.
yeah, yeah.
Great picture.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten all about that picture until I saw it. It was great.
At
And
the southeast
course,
corner of Ross-Ade Stadium, they rolled that thing out there, and
great
it's a
photo.
classic. Yeah.
And Keene, of course, is in that photo, and what a player. You know, I don't need to tell you that. Just a great athlete. Played some linebacker, right, while he was at Purdue. That's primarily what he played in the NFL with the 49ers. And you've spoken to him recently, so you got a probably a relationship and a friendship with Keena. I've never met the guy. Maybe there's a story you can add about Keena, number 85.
Well, a great story is one thing is he's working on his degree and going to finish his degree with his daughter. And that's a story we're going to do this fall because his daughter, I believe, is a rising senior at Purdue. I'm not 100% sure, but his goal is to finish. He had less than a half a year left. You know, like a lot of guys in those days, the kids did not come to school with as many academic credits. They also didn't go to summer school like they do now. And he was short. He went to work out for the pros. That turned out to be just fine. Keene is a very, very intelligent guy. He's owned a car dealership. He has also still working as an executive vice president, I believe, for the 49ers. Yeah, I've seen fewer guys quicker off the ball than Keena Turner. And that defense was, you know, a lot of people in the world of football talk about the 85 Chicago Bears. Purdue might not have been quite up to that level, but the pressure they put on, and one of the best games he ever had that really turned the program around or set it towards a really magical season in 1978 that had been Turner's junior year, was against Ohio State and against Art Sleester, as I recall. Just dominant in terms of getting in the backfield and allowing Purdue to that last year of Woody Hayes and Purdue's 27-16 win. But Keena Turner, he was an outside linebacker in the NFL, and he was a true rush end, not a super physical guy necessarily. But I don't know, you've got the record book. I don't know where he stands in tackles for loss in a season, but he was just dumb.
His 1978 total is fourth. His 1979 total is fifth, and he's fourth in career TFLs for Purdue still to this day.
Yeah, you know, it really was an amazing turnaround that you turn that type of defense. You know, Alex Agassi recruited him and recruited some of those guys in that junk defense, but Keena Turner from vocational, and he is a prince of a guy as well. Great leader.
Of course, Allen too. He was the foundation of those that 49ers dynasty on the defensive side of the ball. You know, the offense gets the accolades: Joe Montana, Dwight Clark, and then that crew. But defensively, you know, Ronnie Lott was a stalwart, and of course, Keena Turner was also a stalwart on those great Niner teams that emerged during that 1981 season when they beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl and went on from there to have a great decade in the 80s.
He could do this and pull up his 4 Super Bowl rings, right? And Dave Butts has a couple of them.
Yeah.
But I love Keena Turner, and I was worried that he might not get picked, and we start getting some hate mail here. But yeah, these are just extremely difficult picks of where to go next. And it's almost a no-win situation here because of there's at least 4 guys at defensive end that I think that would be well worthy of consideration, and I would hesitate to go with the better pros. I am going to pick Sean Phillips, and love Sean, Purdue's MVP in 2003. He was also an All Big Ten level player, excellent pro from New Jersey. There are a lot of guys in there that, and I will mention them on the honorable mention side. But Sean Phillips made a lot of plays. I love Sean because he wore 3 different jersey numbers at Purdue: number 15, number 53. What was his other one? I should know this.
Yeah,
but
caught some passes as a tight end, right?
Yeah, I came in as a tight end. That's what's interesting about Keena Turner. Also came in as a tight end as well. Got transferred over. But that's right, and the other number was 22 for Sean Phillips. But just a great player, great motor, very good pro with the Chargers also, and I think also with Denver as well. But
Yep.
and a guy that just could make it happen on a very good defense for Brock's back and Joe Tiller.
Yeah, great choice. I got to talk to Sean a few months ago for one of my catching ups, and great personality. And
yeah, he's a big personality, isn't he? Yeah, yeah.
Hey, what likes to talk from New Jersey.
Yeah.
And
Gary Manuel, maybe Brian Newbert could tell us who got that recruiting done. Purdue had a lot of success in that area and that geographical area, I should say. And Sean Phillips, one of the best.
Okay, I got one pick left, Alan, as a tackle, and this one may surprise you. So I'm glad you're sitting down still.
Okay.
I want this guy on my right-hand side if I walk into any street fight, any tussle where trouble could erupt. I want this guy.
I know you're going.
With his hand in the dirt on 4th and 1, Alan, to stop that dive up the middle by Michigan or Ohio State. Alan, I want Matt Mitrione.
I knew you were going there. You're getting a little bolder. He's a crazy guy, and
you want crazy, Alan.
Oh yeah.
And they don't come any crazier than Mitrione, but you know what? I don't think he gets enough credit for the athlete he was.
Oh, great athlete! He's showing that now. I mean, now still in his career.
As a fighter, now the MMA career. I mean, this guy was a good athlete. And some people said, well, maybe he had a couple screws loose too. But
he did.
All the better.
Did.
That's how you want your defensive tackles, right? It's so hard to get those big guys to play hard all the time and with passion. And playing hard with passion were things that came naturally to Matt Mitrione. Were there more talented guys, more bigger guys on the inside over Purdue's history? Well, certainly. And I know I jumped over a lot of great tackles to pick Mitrione, but again, that's a guy that was the ultimate warrior who was a great anchor on the inside of those great early 2000 Purdue teams.
And the late Joe Tiller called him meathead, and well-deserved. But I think they had a fun relationship. And then Mitrione, got a little bit of time in the NFL with the New York Giants, I believe. Went on to his what is he, MMA or whatever he does. He lives in our neighborhood, if you can believe that, and when he's in town. And
see him around. He practices sometimes with his kids.
And it's funny. Yeah, it's funny because he's a guy that I have not connected with all the stories we've done on guys like that over the years. He would be a great one, but certainly a very, very talented player and a guy that made big plays too. He made I think he had a touchdown or two from a defensive tackle position against Michigan State. Won in a game actually in 1998, a huge win. That's when he was a freshman of all things, or a redshirt freshman, and that is a guy that just made plays. And you don't forget Matt Mitrione when he walks in the room. All right, I have to pick another defensive tackle. I have picked already Ryan Kerrigan and Sean Phillips. And I love those guys, but there are some that I haven't picked that we'll talk about. And I'm going to have to pick a tackle, and I'm picking a guy that never was a two-time All Big Ten level guy at Purdue. Probably never fully matured as a football player, but is starting to do that in the NFL now, though he's had some injuries. But K'Wan Short, hard to miss. Loved K'Wan anyway, just because his personality, and played with E'Twaun Moore in basketball. And he, at that size, that state championship team, he could dunk a basketball. He was very athletic. He is very athletic. I know that Danny Hope and Daryl, I think, did he play for a year with Daryl Hazel or not? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Danny, but
it was 2009 to 2012.
Yeah, so with Danny, they really had to work to keep his motor going and get him to do it on every play. But he learned to do that. And again, an All Big Ten level player. Purdue hasn't had all that many All Big Ten level players over the last 7-8 years, and he is a guy that deserved. So that leaves me with my 4 picks. Ryan Kerrigan.
Those are two good
Ryan
ones.
Kerrigan, Sean Phillips, K'Wan Short, and of course Dave Butts from my group of my 4. Now, let's go to the honorable mentions and some guys that I'll tell you others that were on my list that I feel bad a couple of them I feel personally bad for. One of them is our former intern. We'll talk about him, who I loved as a player, and he's a kind of the Matt Mitrione player. I'm talking about Craig Terrell, but give me some people on your list.
All right. Well, going back to a little bit before your era, you were probably in high school. How about Ken Novak, a first-round draft choice? Cut out of the same mold as Dave Butts, as you remember, 6'7", probably 290, gargantuan defensive tackle. Again, a first-round pick of the Baltimore Colts. Mike Neal.
Good one.
By the Packers, I believe. The late Marcus Jackson of the junk defense.
Yeah, Hungry Jack, yep.
Hungry Jack was a two-time Allen first-team All-Big Ten choice. How about that?
Yep.
Of course, how about Ken Lauschen?
Yeah.
I remember he was a guy, and I think he was number 72.
Correct.
Bench press like 500 pounds. Was one of the first guys I remember having the Herculean strength, and you couldn't knock him backwards, Alan.
Yeah, we got to find Ken Lauschen somewhere because he's got to be he was a academic All-American, I think an engineering student, extremely good student as well. Did not play in the NFL, though, maybe because of size and maybe because he may have been kind of like Elijah Sindler, maybe didn't want to. Yeah. And he's a great one there. I think a couple other names. I did mention Craig Terrell because I love Craig only because he had an extremely high motor. Yeah. I think he just made plays. He was a lunch pail guy and one of my favorite people. And he plays in a band. He can do it all. He's a great guy and still lives down in Lebanon. And we don't get to connect with him enough. Calvin Clark, a guy you did mention, certainly well worthy of consideration, all Big Ten level player. I liked your Hungry Jack, Marcus Jackson, really good player there as well. On the defensive end side, one of the greats and a quality pro and an even higher quality guy, Aiken Adele, redshirt transfer that played both line, but he could still make our linebacker team, but he really had his success at Purdue defensive end. They put him back at linebacker, didn't fare as well. They moved him back up front. He was an all Big Ten level player. We have an All-American consensus or an All-American on this list, Anthony Spencer. That from Fort Wayne. I'm sorry, it was a first-round draft pick. I don't think he was an All-American, but he was close to it. And a guy that really became a dominant player, and yet in 2006. But one of his best games, I remember, in 2004, the win at Notre Dame. In the first half of that game, he's only a sophomore. The first time he really got a lot of playing time. You just saw how good he was. And I know when they got him out of Fort Wayne, not a super highly recruited guy, but a guy that, was really there to him. And there's two other guys, two bookend defensive ends on that 72 team, 71, 72 teams that were really as good a bookend ends as Purdue had. Gary Harivnak and Steve the Bomber Baumgartner. Harivnak and for some reason, which I'll never quite understand, they moved him from defensive end back to tight end in 72. But then I think he went back to defensive end late in the season. But Purdue really had, when you think about a defense with Greg Bingham, Steve Baumgartner, Gary Harivnak, that's some pretty salty group. And then you throw in the secondary, you've got Carl Capria, and there's some others in there that were Chuck Peebs and some others that were very, very good players on that team. And then one last one I was going to mention, Tom, is Rob Ninkovich. And Rob was a junior college transfer. I think he played 3 years at Purdue, if I'm right. I could be wrong on that, but I do remember he was extremely talented, extremely productive against Indiana. Had 4 sacks, I think, in both of the 2005 and 2006 bucket games, and ended up being an extremely good pro for Bill Belichick's defense with the New England Patriots, and really, really good. So I think I got to my whole list. Anybody else on your list?
And Ninkovich was a great pro, Alan. Real quick, Harivnak and Baumgartner were both second-round draft choices in 73 after Purdue had 3 first-round picks. Right. We had 5 picks first 2 rounds. A few other names for you, buddy. We have to mention Ray Edwards. maybe never really reached his potential. I think that's fair to say. Came in with huge hype. Was a massive recruit from Cincinnati. Cliff Averill.
Oh yeah,
a great pro with the Seahawks. Chike O'Keefer, Allen. Come on, buddy.
Yeah.
West Lafayette Red Devil. I mean, he played linebacker, but remember, he really had a success after Joe Tiller came. Chike wasn't on the team in '97. Came back as a fifth-year senior in '98. Rocks back and made him an end, and bang. Made him a lot of money.
One of the best bookend defensive games I've ever seen out of Purdue was, of course, O'Keefer and Roosevelt Colvin against Michael Bishop in Kansas State in the 98 Alamo Bowl. I know you look at the score in that game, you say Purdue gave up 34 points. That's because the special teams handed Kansas State 14 points. Purdue had one of its best defensive efforts ever against an extremely good offense, but Chike is good and a really, really good player. I might have had to cheat and put him on my linebacking core.
That's fine. He spent most of his career linebacker.
But but you're right. At the end of his career and in the NFL, played his hand in the dirt.
You remember Blaine Smith was a two-time first
really good player.
Pick. A couple other names for real quick. A buddy of mine, Kevin Holly. And then Chris Scott.
All both good players.
In the NFL as well. And then one of my favorites when I was in high school was Matt Hernandez.
Yeah.
In the NFL a little bit too. Number 71, Matt Hernandez. And those
Detroit
81, 82 teams. So that exhausts the guys that I had under my consideration.
Yeah, I think you look at guys, another guy that we talked about a little bit in special teams, but also extremely good defensive end. War number 15, Tom Kingsbury, who was a defensive end on that junk defense, really good player. And that's the part of the fun of all this is that you mentioned enough guys that you remember, and we're probably missing some, but Blaine Smith, really good player out of Gary, Indiana, was very, very productive. Chris Scott. Matt Hernandez was a very highly regarded recruit when Jim Young and played. I think Hernandez played a fair amount, even on that 80 team that went to 79 and 80 teams, maybe just 80, where he kind of worked his way into the starting lineup. But a real physical presence, to say the least. So, yeah, I think we've gotten to everybody, but probably not. But I think we got to the main ones. But it's really an interesting list. I know Purdue's dense of defensive end, but I do think it's interesting that the tackles have played as well. I mean, that there's many good ones, and there have been some good ones.
Lastly, one other guy worth mentioning of more recent vintage, Jake Replogle.
Really good player. Yeah,
great
another
player.
Guy that high motor.
He would have been a pro. He would have been a pro, I think, had he not had some of his injury issues. That was a guy that was a warrior, like a lot of the other guys we talked about on the interior.
Yeah, love Jake, and had he not had the concussion issues, he made the smart move, I think, for himself not to play, and didn't play on great teams, but he got better year in, year out. Very, very active. Very, very active high motor player, and he had about 7 brothers that all played at Indiana. Now, he had a brother or 2 that were down in Indiana as well. Jake, a really good player. So a lot of fun doing this, Tom. We have now hit the defensive backs. We've hit receivers. We've hit running backs, and now defensive linemen. We've got linebackers, and of course we had special teams last week. Linebackers and that position called quarterback. We'll hit that as well as we and offensive lineman, which will be a curious one to look at too. So, all right, have a great week, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend, Tom. And want to thank our sponsors, and of course, that is Follett's and Purdue Federal Credit Union, East End Grill, 6th Street Dive, Charters Team Remax Ability Plus, First Source Bank. And then I want to mention all the restaurants that have been good to us that are still working hard to maintain business during this COVID crisis. And that, of course, is Arnie's there. Brad Cohen and Kurt Cohen doing well with a lot of carry-out business. But I think the restaurant, their seating is open at Market Square in Lafayette. Smee's place and has been Tom and I were down there for a little football chat last year. But we look forward someday to being able to do that again. Yeah. And Veneta down there in the north side of Indianapolis, they've been good to us. And of course, Triple X, you and I have our lunch out there on the patio. that's a slice of heaven right now. They're doing a great job with their COVID protocol and being able to keep people safe and keep them outside. Carrie and Greg Ayersman have been great to us as well. Whitaker Inn, Brian always mentions in there, has been a sponsor of ours, just north side of West Lafayette. Great spot to get some carry-out food. So, all right, Tom, have a great rest of the week, and we'll look forward to our next edition of Saturday Chat.
Take care, buddy.
All right, thank you.